mean, look, from where I sit, what you have is an extraordinary situation where two people who have caused intense damage to the reputation of the royal family and the institution of the monarchy are now running a kind of renegade rival royal family, engaging. They want to go and make a ton of money, out of being Harry and Meghan, fine. But to do it under the guise of titles bestowed by the royal family and monarchy, which they have spent years trashing, I think is unacceptable.
About this whole visit was that within minutes of Meghan turning up there, the outfit that she was wearing was being monetized on the one-off platform.
Yes.
Which
It begins with a tear. A single drop of water sliding down the left cheek of Meghan Markle, captured by cameras on a Friday morning at Bondi Beach. Survivors of a terrorist atrocity sat across from her, their grief raw, their memories unhealed. And yet, what the world saw was not simply grief. It was performance, a moment that would ignite outrage, suspicion, and a firestorm of accusations that Meghan Markle had turned tragedy into commerce. The scene was carefully staged, cameras rolling, survivors waiting, the press poised to capture every flicker of emotion. And then, on cue, the tear appeared. For many, it was a symbol of compassion.
All of them, even the B-listers, could easily get crowds to follow them and make it look like they are just sort of these world.
But for others, it was a calculated gesture, a performance rehearsed years earlier in a Toronto members club, where Meghan had once boasted of her ability to summon a single tear from her left eye in 3 seconds flat. That clip, buried in the archives of YouTube and TikTok, resurfaced with devastating clarity. The Bondi tear was not spontaneous grief. It was muscle memory, a trained reflex, and the timing could not have been more damning, because even before the survivors had left the beach, the cream coat, the boots, and the handbag Meghan wore
that she was wearing was being monetized on the one-off platform.
Yes.
Which I know we're going to get into the same thing happening at Bondi, which I just find so revolting. I can barely find words to describe it.
That morning were live for sale on her new fashion platform. The massacre site had become a backdrop for commerce. 15 lives lost, a 10-year-old boy among them, and Meghan Markle walked into the aftermath, wearing an outfit linked to affiliate commissions. The outrage was immediate, the disgust palpable, and the credibility of the Sussex brand began to collapse under the weight of its own contradictions. This was not an isolated incident. Just 3 days earlier, Meghan had visited the adolescent oncology ward at Melbourne's Royal Children's Hospital. Teddy bears on the bed, teenage patients fighting for their lives, staff moved by the presence of a duchess. And yet, within hours, the Karen G. Priscilla dress Meghan wore was live on her fashion site, priced at £660, earrings and shoes linked out, every item monetized. Meghan had announced her investment in the platform, one-off, that very day. The timing was catastrophic. What should have been a moment of compassion became a marketing launch. The cancer ward became a runway, and the backlash was swift. Tom Sykes, a veteran royal correspondent known for his cautious fairness, broke ranks. His headline was blunt: Meghan just turned a massacre site into an online shopping mall. His subheading cut deeper: making a quick buck off the event is a revolting dereliction of one's duty as a human. Not as a royal, as a human. When even the fair-minded wing of the royal press corps began to use language like that, the shift was seismic. A line had been crossed, and it would not be uncrossed. The outrage was not simply about fashion. It was about credibility, about the perception that Meghan and Harry had transformed themselves into a renegade rival royal family, staging tours, commanding attention, and monetizing tragedy. The monarchy itself was caught in the crossfire. Prince William, insiders claimed, was ready to cut the cord, to strip the titles, to sever the connection. King Charles, ever the soft touch, hesitated, but the damage was undeniable. Every rival tour, every staged moment, every monetized outfit chipped away at the institution of the monarchy, and the public backlash grew louder. The Bondi tear became a symbol of performance over authenticity, commerce over compassion, and the Toronto clip from 2014 became the smoking gun. Meghan had once laughed about her ability to cry on command, specifying the eye, the timing, the precision. At Bondi, she did exactly that. The parallel was too perfect, too damning. What should have been a moment of shared grief became evidence of manipulation, and the credibility of the Sussexes crumbled further. The fashion platform, one-off, was not simply a business venture. It was a statement of intent. Meghan was not content to be a duchess. She was building a brand that leveraged royal titles, public appearances, and tragedy itself. affiliate commissions of 10 to 25%, investment stakes, product launches timed to coincide with hospital visits and massacre memorials. The optics were catastrophic. The backlash was relentless. And the narrative shifted from compassion to grift. The press dissected every detail. The blink pattern before the tear. The timing of the product launch. The giggles captured on camera. The outfits priced at thousands of pounds. The Cartier bracelets, the Dior pumps, the Tiffany jewelry, all monetized, all linked to the platform. Meghan was no longer seen as a victim of press hostility. She was seen as a disaster tourist, a grifter, a woman who turned tragedy into commerce. And the public perception shifted irrevocably. The outrage was not confined to Britain. In Australia, petitions circulated demanding that the Sussexes be barred from future tours. Security debates erupted over the cost of protecting a couple who no longer represented the monarchy, but continued to leverage its titles. The sense of betrayal was profound. Survivors of tragedy felt used. Citizens felt manipulated. And the monarchy itself felt undermined. The credibility crisis deepened with every revelation. Legal battles loomed. Leaked information exposed internal tensions. The comparison between the Sussexes' current image and their past royal standing was stark. Once seen as modernizers, as fresh faces of compassion, they were now seen as profiteers. The decline was dramatic, the backlash unrelenting, and the narrative unstoppable. The Bondi tear was not just a tear. It was a turning point, a moment when performance collided with tragedy, when commerce collided with compassion, when credibility collapsed under the weight of contradiction, and the fallout would reverberate across the monarchy, the media, and the public for years to come. The controversy at Bondi Beach was not just another headline in the endless cycle of royal drama. It was a moment that crystallized the growing unease surrounding Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, a moment when performance, commerce, and tragedy collided in a way that left the public stunned. On that Friday morning, the cameras were positioned with precision. Survivors of Australia's worst attack since 1996 gathered to meet the Duchess of Sussex. The atmosphere was heavy with grief, the kind of silence that follows atrocity. And then, as the lenses focused, a single tear slid down Meghan's left cheek. It was the image every outlet carried, the still frame that dominated front pages. But beneath the surface, suspicion brewed, because this was not the first time Meghan had displayed such a tear. A clip from 2014, filmed at Soho House in Toronto, resurfaced. In it, Meghan, then an actress on Suits, laughed as she described her party trick, the ability to summon a single tear from her left eye in 3 seconds. She demonstrated it on camera, proud of the precision. The parallel was undeniable. At Bondi, the same eye, the same timing, the same performance. What had been presented as grief now looked rehearsed. The timing made the optics worse. Before the survivors had even left the beach, the cream coat, boots, and handbag Meghan wore were live for sale on her new fashion platform, One Off. The massacre site had become a backdrop for commerce. 15 lives lost, a child among them, and Meghan's outfit linked to affiliate commissions. The backlash was immediate. 3 days earlier, the same pattern had unfolded at Melbourne's Royal Children's Hospital. Meghan visited the adolescent oncology ward, meeting teenage patients, surrounded by teddy bears and medical staff. Within hours, the Karen G. Priscilla dress she wore was listed on One Off, priced at £660, earrings and shoes linked out. Meghan had announced her investment in the platform that very day. The timing was catastrophic. What should have been a gesture of compassion became a marketing launch. The press corps, long divided over Meghan, reacted with rare unanimity. Tom Sykes, a veteran correspondent known for his fairness, broke ranks. His headline was blunt. Meghan just turned a massacre site into an online shopping mall. His subheading cut deeper. Making a quick buck off the event is a revolting dereliction of one's duty as a human. Not as a royal. As a human. That shift mattered. For years, Meghan had been defended by a segment of the press that cautioned against unfair attacks. But when even the fair-minded voices began to describe her actions as revolting, the narrative changed. A line had been crossed. The outrage was not confined to Britain. In Australia, petitions circulated demanding that the Sussexes be barred from future tours. Security debates erupted over the cost of protecting a couple who no longer represented the monarchy, but continued to leverage its titles. Survivors felt used. Citizens felt manipulated. The monarchy itself felt undermined. The credibility crisis deepened with every revelation. Meghan's fashion platform was not simply a business venture. It was a statement of intent. Affiliate commissions of 10 to 25%, investment stakes, Product launches timed to coincide with hospital visits and massacre memorials. The optics were catastrophic. The backlash relentless. The Bondi tear became a symbol of performance over authenticity, commerce over compassion, and the Toronto clip became the smoking gun. Meghan had once laughed about her ability to cry on command, specifying the eye, the timing, the precision. At Bondi, she did exactly that. The parallel was too perfect, too damning. The monarchy faced a dilemma. Prince William, insiders claimed, was ready to sever ties, to strip titles, to protect the institution. King Charles hesitated, reluctant to cut the cord, but the damage was undeniable. Every rival tour, every staged moment, every monetized outfit chipped away at the monarchy's credibility. Public perception shifted irrevocably. Meghan was no longer seen as a victim of press hostility. She was seen as a disaster tourist, a grifter, a woman who turned tragedy into commerce. The outrage was visceral. The credibility collapse unstoppable. The Bondi tear was not just a tear. It was a turning point, a moment when performance collided with tragedy, when commerce collided with compassion, when credibility collapsed under contradiction. And the fallout would reverberate across the monarchy, the media, and the public for years to come. The fallout from Bondi Beach did not end with a tear. It spread across Australia like a shockwave, igniting debates in Parliament, stirring petitions among citizens, and forcing security officials to confront an uncomfortable question. Why was a couple who had stepped away from royal duties still being treated like sovereign representatives? The Australia tour had been billed as a gesture of goodwill, a chance for Harry and Meghan to reconnect with the Commonwealth. But in reality, it became a rival royal tour, an unsanctioned performance that blurred the lines between monarchy and celebrity. The optics were devastating. For the monarchy, it was a direct challenge to its authority. For the public, it was a reminder that the Sussexes were leveraging titles they had spent years criticizing. Petitions began to circulate. Citizens demanded that the Sussexes be barred from future tours, arguing that their presence was not only divisive but costly. Security arrangements for the couple mirrored those of working royals, with taxpayer funds covering protection details. Yet Harry and Meghan were no longer representatives of the crown. They were private individuals, monetizing their appearances, launching fashion platforms, and staging events that blurred compassion with commerce. The outrage was not simply about money. It was about legitimacy. Security officials faced a dilemma. To deny protection was to risk catastrophe. To provide it was to legitimize a rival royal brand. The debate grew louder. Commentators described the Sussexes as renegade royals, staging tours that undermined the institution. Every appearance, every outfit, every monetized moment chipped away at the monarchy's credibility. The controversy deepened with Meghan's retreat event, marketed as a wellness experience. Tickets were priced at levels that shocked even her supporters. Organizers struggled to justify the costs, citing exclusivity and access. But the optics were catastrophic. Survivors of tragedy had just watched Meghan monetize their grief, and now she was charging thousands for a retreat that promised empowerment. The disconnect was glaring. Critics described the retreat as tone-deaf, a symbol of privilege masquerading as compassion. The timing was disastrous. Coming on the heels of the Bondi scandal, it reinforced the perception that Meghan's brand was built not on service, but on profit. Organizers faced backlash, ticket sales faltered, and the credibility of the event collapsed. Public perception declined rapidly. What had once been a narrative of victimhood, Meghan as the target of unfair press hostility, shifted into a narrative of exploitation. Citizens saw a pattern. Hospital visits followed by fashion launches, massacre memorials followed by affiliate links, retreats priced beyond reach. Compassion had become commerce. Authenticity had become performance. The monarchy faced mounting pressure. Prince William, insiders claimed, was ready to sever ties, to strip titles, to protect the institution from further damage. King Charles hesitated, reluctant to cut the cord. But the debate was no longer confined to palace walls. It played out in headlines, petitions, and public outrage. Legal battles loomed. Media exposure intensified. Leaked information revealed tensions within the Sussex camp, disputes over strategy, and concerns about credibility. The comparison between the Sussexes' current image and their past royal standing was stark. Once seen as modernizers, they were now seen as profiteers. The decline was dramatic, the backlash unrelenting. The Australia tour controversy became a symbol of the larger crisis. It was not simply about one tear at Bondi Beach. It was about legitimacy, credibility, and the future of the monarchy. The Sussexes had positioned themselves as global ambassadors, staging rival tours, commanding attention, and monetizing tragedy. The monarchy struggled to respond. The public grew restless, and the narrative shifted irrevocably. The retreat event underscored the disconnect. Tickets priced at thousands, organizers scrambling, critics outraged. It was a moment that crystallized the perception of Meghan as tone-deaf, privileged, and opportunistic. The backlash was swift. The credibility collapsed unstoppable. Public perception declined further. Polls showed waning support. Commentators described the Sussexes as grifters, disaster tourists, profiteers. The narrative was no longer about compassion. It was about commerce. And the monarchy itself was caught in the crossfire. The Australia tour controversy, the petitions, the security debates, the retreat event, all of it built into a crescendo of outrage. The credibility crisis deepened. The backlash grew louder. And the narrative of Harry and Meghan shifted from victimhood to exploitation. The monarchy faced a choice: to sever ties or to endure the damage. Prince William pushed for action. King Charles hesitated. The public demanded accountability. The press dissected every detail. And the credibility of the Sussex brand collapsed under the weight of its own contradictions. The Australia tour was not just a tour. It was a turning point. A moment when legitimacy was questioned, when compassion was monetized, when credibility collapsed. And the fallout would reverberate across the monarchy, the media, and the public for years to come. The crisis surrounding Prince Harry and Meghan Markle did not remain confined to Australia. It spread across continents, amplified by headlines, dissected by commentators, and intensified by legal battles that exposed the fragility of their credibility. What began with a tear at Bondi Beach evolved into a global reckoning, a confrontation between image and reality, between performance and authenticity, between the Sussexes' ambitions and the monarchy's survival. Legal battles became the next chapter. The Sussexes, already entangled in lawsuits against tabloids and media outlets, found themselves facing scrutiny, not only for defamation, but for credibility itself. Every filing, every leaked document, every courtroom revelation added fuel to the fire. The press dissected their claims, questioned their narratives, and exposed contradictions. What had once been framed as a fight for privacy now looked like a fight for control, a desperate attempt to manage a collapsing brand. Media exposure intensified. Outlets across Britain, Australia, and the United States ran investigations into the timing of Meghan's fashion launches, the monetization of tragedy, and the contradictions in their public statements. The Toronto clip resurfaced repeatedly, played alongside Bondi footage, dissected frame by frame. Analysts described the tear as performance, the fashion site as exploitation, the retreat event as tone-deaf. The narrative was relentless. The credibility collapsed unstoppable. Leaked information revealed internal tensions. Reports surfaced of disputes within the Sussex camp, disagreements over strategy, concerns about optics. Advisors warned of backlash, urged caution, pleaded for restraint. But the momentum of the brand was unstoppable. Every appearance was monetized, every outfit linked, every gesture scrutinized. The leaks painted a picture of a couple caught between ambition and reality, between the desire to build a global brand and the consequences of credibility collapse. The comparison between past royal image and current situation was stark. Once, Harry and Meghan had been seen as modernizers, fresh faces of compassion, symbols of a monarchy adapting to the 21st century. Their wedding had been celebrated as a moment of inclusivity. Their early tours praised for authenticity. But now, they were seen as profiteers, disaster tourists, grifters. The decline was dramatic, the backlash unrelenting, the narrative irreversible. The monarchy faced a profound dilemma. Prince William, insiders claimed, was ready to sever ties, to strip titles, to protect the institution from further damage. King Charles hesitated, reluctant to cut the cord, torn between compassion and duty. But the pressure was mounting. Every rival tour, every monetized tragedy, every legal battle chipped away at the monarchy's credibility. The institution itself was caught in the crossfire. The broader implications were profound. The Sussex crisis was not simply about one couple. It was about the future of the monarchy, the balance between tradition and modernity, the tension between duty and celebrity. The monarchy had survived wars, abdications, scandals, but the Sussex crisis was different. It was global, amplified by social media, fueled by commerce, and rooted in credibility collapse. It was a challenge not just to the institution, but to its very legitimacy. The narrative built into a crescendo. Bondi Beach, the Toronto clip, the fashion platform, the retreat event, the petitions, the security debates, the legal battles, the leaks. Each chapter added weight. Each revelation deepened the crisis. Each moment reinforced the perception of exploitation. The credibility collapse was total. And yet, the story was not simply about scandal. It was about trust, about the fragile bond between public figures and the people they claimed to serve, about the consequences of performance without authenticity, commerce without compassion, ambition without credibility. The Sussex crisis was a warning that image cannot replace reality, that performance cannot replace authenticity, that commerce cannot replace compassion. The monarchy faced a choice: to sever ties or to endure the damage, to protect the institution or to risk its credibility, to adapt or to collapse. The Sussex crisis forced that choice into the open, and the world watched, dissected, debated, and judged. The conclusion was stark. The Bondi tear was not just a tear. It was a symbol of performance over authenticity, commerce over compassion, ambition over credibility, a symbol of a crisis that would reverberate across the monarchy, the media, and the public for years to come. The investigative narrative ends not with resolution, but with a question. What is the future of the monarchy in a world where performance can be monetized, where compassion can be commodified, where credibility can collapse in a single tear? The Sussex crisis does not answer that question. It poses it, and it leaves the monarchy, the media, and the public to grapple with the consequences.